through some high-level stuff. First, what is a CDP? Why do I need one? Why do I even care about this, right? We'll talk through some CDP key features as we see them, considerations for deployment, right? So thinking more on the environmental, the infrastructure side of things, and then everyone's favorite, the composability factor, right? Composable is a word that we hear thrown around a lot. What do you need to know about it? We need to understand about it. How does it affect you in your CDP journey? So with that, what is a CDP, right? So rather than make up our own definition, we went to the experts, right? We went to CDP Institute, Gartner, and Forrester, among many other analysts, right? So ultimately, what you want to think about here is the unification of customer data, right? Creating that customer profile, which has been perfected, which has been cleansed, which is constantly updated, that you can then use downstream to deliver a compelling moment, right? Why do I need a CDP? Kris, why do I need a CDP?
You need data. And generally what we see is those data are fractured, they're siloed, they're spread across the enterprise. It becomes frustrating, right, for marketers or any business user to be able to collate that data and ultimately be able to use it for, a customer experience. So the CDP does just that, right? It goes and helps identify where those data sources are. It brings it together. It does the unification through identity resolution, through sort of the keys that are within the data sets themselves. But ultimately, that data are all collected, collated, unified, and are stored in a place that is accessible to downstream users, and upstream users as well.
So Kris, can you tell us a little bit about the Redpoint CDP? Let's talk about some key features.
On the left-hand side, there's that data, right? There's that fractured silo data that sits within the enterprise, sits outside the enterprise, but all of it is necessary in order for, if we move all the way to the right, to be able to interact with customers in the various touch points. So what do you do in the middle of it, right? So let's go back to kind of what we talked about. Why do you need a CDP? Well, gathering all that data and, sort of processing it and making it fit for purpose so that you can have those conversations with your customers, right? So that's the very first thing we need to do, right? We need to have an automated way that we can bring data in. We can, apply data quality rules. So once we actually ingest that data, and now the next thing we do is, now we need to look across those various data sets. We can do that through, identity resolution, right? So we can use various matching techniques in order to identify like entities within the data. Well, now we can begin to use that data. We can segment on it, right? We can find interesting groups or groupings within the data, and we can begin to activate those customers, right? And again, that activation happens over those outside on those customer touch points.
So now that we know the what, right, now it's sort of the how, right? So thinking about, CDPs across the board, there are typically different deployment options, right? So you have sort of the standard SaaS, which on this particular side is Redpoint Cloud. That's where your database, your data model in and of itself, we're controlling. Here at Redpoint, we'll manage it for you. Don't worry about tuning and performance, we got you. In the middle is kind of what we're calling hybrid cloud, right? So that is where maybe you are in a regulated industry, maybe you're in healthcare, you're in financial services, where you don't want to just give up access to your data, right? You maybe need to carve out a portion of your data cloud, something like a Snowflake, Google BigQuery, right? That allows you to maintain control within your own four walls, for lack of a better term, but still get the benefits of having Redpoint host sort of that system, as it's mentioned here. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum from SaaS is that on-prem, right? On bare metal, which is still, very much a use case that we are still seeing, right? So it's even beyond, I don't want necessarily Redpoint to even manage my infrastructure. I want this fully managed in-house. So that's when the customer themselves want to maintain control of both the database and the system. And kind of another factor of this within the deployment scale is composability, right? So I think we hear a lot about composable CDPs, composable architecture, right? So we kind of want to talk a little bit about, we're calling it packaged versus composable, right? So thinking about packaged, right? So this is fully end-to-end, all the bells and whistles, it will do everything for you. This may be an excellent solution for many people, right? It's typically more plug and play. You're getting better speed to value. There's embedded best practices because we're owning that full journey end to end. Similarly with compliance, right? So now you're getting a tool that has all of those features baked in that will allow you to achieve outcomes end to end without needing any additional integration. The con there, right, is that potential feature misalignment is what I'm calling it, but maybe they're not that great at one thing, right? So maybe there's a tool and they do everything, but their identity resolution isn't that strong, or their segmentation activation isn't that strong, right? So now you're a little bit limited in terms of getting that best of breed. What about composable? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so this is sort of the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Rather than everything all in one, the sort of full kit and caboodle. This is the modular plug and play aspect of that, right? Obviously, there's a lot of pros in that, right? It's very flexible, right? You can in theory pull one out and put another one in. You have the ability to sort of scale that. Obviously, if vendors play in that sort of composable arena, there's probably advanced integration capabilities, right? There's a lot of APIs, there's a lot of ways to work seamlessly across those different vendors, those different modules. But, right, there's, as much as there's an upside to it, there's always a downside, right? So, this introduces complexity, right? Now you've got maybe 4, 5 different packages, different vendors you're working with. Now you've got a pretty big vendor ecosystem, right? Maybe security and compliance becomes an issue as well, right? Because they all kind of work differently in terms of how they secure themselves or what. So they may not work within the sort of security frameworks that you are required or your policy set forth within your company.
I would say would be critical to think about as you're moving through, right? Thinking about your vendor ecosystem overall, what are the business outcomes you want to achieve, and how can you eventually get there, right? So you want a CDP, great. Hearing all this, yes, I definitely need this particular thing to achieve all of these business outcomes I have, right? So now what do I do? But step 1 is that, define your business outcomes. What do you want to do? Don't just think about features and buttons. Think about what do you actually want to achieve and in what time frame, right? So your own roadmap as an organization. How do we then align that with what a CDP does? From there, it's the deployment options, right? And along with the deployment options, do we want to go composable or not? So once you understand what your business outcomes are, now what do you have in your stack, right? What exists now for you? Does it cover those basic needs that you're thinking about to achieve those outcomes? What do you really need to bring a CDP in for? And then that will help you on your path to CDP greatness.